Good morning. Okay, we only have just first block here, so we're going to get right to it. Beside me here is Mr. Joe Ditmar. As most of you know, he's a Tower 2 survivor. So on 9/11, he was 105th floor. 105th floor. One of the fortunate to make it out of Tower 2. Between the two towers, some 2,600 people lost their lives. So today he's here to spend a little time with you, tell you about his observations on 9/11, and then time permitting at the end, we'll do a little 10 or 15-minute question and answer period. During the Q&A, if you'll stand up, Sergeant Woodham over here will bring you a mic, identify yourself, and we'll take as many questions as we can. All right? Sound good? Without further ado, Mr. Dittmar.
It's great to be here at Clover High School. This came about very quickly. If you saw one of my favorite movies, Anchorman, the original, wow, that escalated quickly. And we started this out to be a ROTC, get-together talk, and now there's about 800 of you out here. So that is absolutely fantastic. I'm glad that you're here. I want to thank Major Brian Batson for his warm and welcoming request to be a part of this morning and for all the detail and attention that he paid to making this happen. You know, just a few short months ago in June, on a warm, early summer evening, Reverend Clementa Pinckney and 8 other members of his congregation at the Emmanuel AME Church began their evening doing what they do, and each and every one of us do, hundreds and hundreds of times, maybe thousands of times a day. They made a decision. They made a decision with little thought of consequences other than the normal. They made a decision to attend the regular Wednesday night Bible study that was part of their habit and their faith. They also decided to take a stranger in amongst them that evening, based on their beliefs of open hearts and welcoming arms. Who would have ever thought that simple, personal, easy set of decisions would result in all of them losing their lives that fateful night? The horror and the devastation of this heinous act in Charleston on June 17th shook the country, shook the community, shook the world in a sad, memorable way, and always will leave a scar on that community. Like Columbine, Katrina, the Boston Marathon, this event was once more a none too subtle reminder that life is fleeting, that we must expect the unexpected, and that every decision we make can have incredible consequences. Our life is full of decisions, some big, some small, some well-planned, and most instant. Decisions are critical to how we act, how we perform, and how we think every day. And the information we bring to the decision-making process affects that process in a much bigger way than we usually anticipate. It's what we know, who we know, and how we know it that makes the decision possible for right or for wrong. And how do I know all this? Well, I think my personal decision-making expertise was tried, tested, and galvanized on September 11, 2001. You see, as was mentioned on that day, I was on the 105th floor of 2 World Trade Center, the South Tower, when the events of that day began to unfold. And my being here today in front of all of you to relate all of this is testament to making solid decisions. So I thought I'd share my story with you to see how the decisions of many affected that day. When I think about it, I just talked to a senior backstage. She was 3 when this happened. Some of you may not have been born. None of you probably remember what happened on September 11, 2001, not directly, but only read it through books or learned from your teachers or learned through your parents, or even worse, had a direct familial connection with it. I had a connection with this in a way that I would wish upon none of you. I'm in the insurance industry. The suit, the tie, the sport coat kind of give that away, okay? I graduated from Temple University in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. I know you can tell from my beautiful southern accent that I don't come from this part of the world, okay? I went to Temple University, and I'm so old that when I graduated from Temple University, my goal in life was not to be in the insurance industry. I was a communications major. I was going to be a disco DJ. That was going to be my life, okay? But life has a way of playing funny things with you. My dad was in the business. His dad was in the business. His dad was in the business. I didn't stand a chance. I was going into the insurance industry no matter what. And if you knew anything at all about the World Trade Center complex, those two buildings, they were like a mecca for the insurance industry. Virtually every insurance organization in the country, maybe in the world, had offices there. So it wasn't unusual for a guy like myself to be called to the Trade Center to attend a meeting. In August of 2001, Mary Wieman, an extremely powerful executive for the Aon Corporation, a woman who had smashed through what still exists sometimes, those glass ceilings for women that still exist in our business, she called me and she asked me to attend a meeting the following month at the World Trade Center. I didn't want to go to Mary's meeting. I had a chance to go to another type of insurance meeting, the type that involved aluminum or titanium sticks about this long, little metal heads on the end, little white balls in the grass, and you go like this, okay? Had a chance to go have some fun with some compatriots. So I didn't really want to attend her meeting, and I was kind of giving her that feeling, and she did to me at that moment what every woman has been doing to me since the day I was born. She threw good old-fashioned Catholic guilt down on my head and said, "Sure, Joe, no problem, you know. It's no big deal that nobody from CNA, the company I was working for, nobody from CNA is going to be at the meeting. It's no big deal that, you know, nobody will be represented. I'm sure your boss won't mind that your company has nobody." I said, "Stop, Mary, stop, please, please. I'll be there. I'll be there." I learned something from my dad. My dad passed 2 years ago, but he was my hero in life, my mentor in the business. And I learned a lot of things. One of the things I learned from him is something that maybe some of your parents have told you, maybe that you live by every day. One of those adages that you hear over and over and over and over. Plan your work, work your plan. And I thought of that at that particular moment, and I said, you know what, I can do this. I can go to New York, I can go to that meeting, I can go to the fun meeting that I wanted to go to, I can plan it all, work it out, and that'll be the way it was. And that's exactly what I did. So on the Friday before the Tuesday, I went back to Philadelphia, to the city that I was born and raised in, and visited my mom and dad on Friday, saw my sister and visited with her on Saturday, something that I still don't do enough in my life. And on Sunday, I went to the Philadelphia Eagles St. Louis Rams football game with my son. My son's 34 years old, okay? I still pay for those Eagles tickets, and he still sits in the seats. What a deal for him, right? For the parents and the teachers out there, the bank of dad or mom never closes, okay? But my son works for Valero Oil. He works on the pipelines. He's what they call a roughneck. Now, he's a little shorter than me, but he's in great physical shape. And because he's one of these tough guys that goes out there and fights fires and fixes pipes and stuff like that, he thinks he's macho. He thinks he's really a tough guy, okay? And it was really funny because we're coming out of the game that Sunday, and we're halfway through the parking lot, and this guy comes up to me and he gives me this big, giant bear hug. And he whispers in my ear, "I miss you, Dad." And I push back a little bit, and I see this little tear in his eye. And I knew he wasn't crying because of the game. The Eagles beat the Rams. Almost everybody beats the Rams, okay? So I guess it was just a pretense of what was about to occur. And we just didn't know it. I took off in my car. He took off in his truck. I went down to South Jersey to a beautiful Marriott country club resort, got up on Monday morning, played that golf round that I was hoping to play, had a great lunch with the guys that I had played golf with, had a real business meeting on Monday afternoon, and then a business dinner on Monday night. And I told the guys and women that I was with at that dinner, hey, I can't pull an all-nighter. I can't be with you folks all night long. It's just not possible because I got a plan. I got a plan and I got to follow the plan. If you've ever been to New York, if you know New York, if you look about things in New York, you visited New York, whatever, the one thing that you'll know is that you never want to drive into New York. You thought the traffic outside school was bad today? That's nothing, okay? Driving into New York is just unbelievable. And I didn't want to do that day either, so I had a plan. I got up at 3:30 in the morning in South Jersey, and I drove back to Philadelphia, to 30th Street train station, Amtrak. I was going to take the train from Philadelphia into New York City. That was the best way to go, and that's exactly what I did. Got up at 3:30, got back into Philly at about 5:30. I pulled into the train station, got my round-trip ticket from New York to Philadelphia. The train pulled in at 6 a.m. I ran down the steps, got onto the car that I was supposed to be on, took off my sport coat, took off my backpack. I usually don't carry a briefcase, I carry a backpack. Took out my laptop, turned on my laptop, sat down in the seat, and did what all of us insurance executives do at 6 a.m. in the morning on the train to New York City with our laptops on our lap. I fell asleep. It was 6 a.m. I was really tired. And off we went. And we were about 2/3 of the way up when my cell phone rang. Only the teachers, maybe, in this room remember life before cell phones. You guys have had cell phones since the day you were born. You probably don't know what a landline is, okay? And if you do, good for you. You get an A, okay? When they rewrite the history books again within the next quarter century, I guarantee you that one of the greatest inventions ever made that will be shown in those history books is a cell phone. It's changed the way we live our lives. Back in the day, the superintendent remembers back in the day, I guarantee you, okay? Back in the day, when you were going on a business trip like this, you had to have a real plan. You had to have something written down on a piece of paper, an itinerary. It told you where you were going to be, what office you were going to visit, what time you were going to be there, what hotel you were staying at. You had the hotel phone number, and you took a thing called an AT&T long distance card, because back then there were no rollover minutes, there were no national plans, nobody wanted to make a long distance call. It cost too much money. So you had to have this real sticky plan. With cell phones now, wherever you are, that's where you'll be. Just hit me up with a cell phone. No big deal, right? Call me. You need me, call me. That's what you tell. Hey, Mom, you need me? Just give me a call, right? Hey, Dad, you need to get me? Just give me a call. Well, by 2001, we'd gotten used to that already. We all had our cell phones. I bet you thought I forgot where I was in my speech, okay? I didn't. And my cell phone rang about 2/3 of the way up. I picked it out, turned it on. Hello. I was asleep, remember? And it was my wife. Now, before this trip, I had said to my wife, listen, I'm going to New York for a business trip. I'm going to stop in Philly for the weekend, see my folks and whatnot, have a meeting on Tuesday in New York, be back Tuesday night. Love you. That's all I told her. So the cell phone rings. I kind of groggily answer, and my wife says, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to wake you up. I said, no, it's all right. The train's about to pull into Newark, and I need to get off. She said, Newark? I thought you said you were going to New York. I said, yeah, but it's a lot easier to get to the World Trade Center if you take the PATH train from Newark, because it stops right underneath the World Trade Center. And that's exactly what it was. The PATH train, local New Jersey transit type of device, goes right from Newark, New Jersey, and goes into New York City, stops right at the World Trade Center. So I got off my Amtrak train dutifully with thousands of other New Jerseyans and made my way into New York City. When I got off at the Trade Center and got up into the building, it was pretty amazing. Real ancient history for you guys. In 1993, there had been a bombing. at the trade centers. Not a lot of bad effects. Nobody really severely affected, but it was bad. So security at the World Trade Center as a result of that was really good. And I walked into that building that day, and it was amazing. There were as many as 25,000 people in each of those buildings at any particular point in time. Each of those buildings had their own zip code. That's how big this community was. And yet when I walked into 2 World Trade Center, the South Tower, the security person, he somehow knew I didn't belong. He just knew, just by looking at my face. He waved me over to the security desk. I identified myself with my driver's license. He took my picture electronically, and he transferred it onto a little plastic card. And on that card, it had my name, the company that I was going to visit, Aon Corporation, the floor that I was going to, 105, how long the card was good for. It was good until September 12th, 2001, and a barcode. And the barcode was the most important thing on that card. Not just because it contained all that other information I just talked about, but also because that was the way that you would swipe your way electronically through the electronic turnstiles that separated you from the elevators. Both buildings were identical. Both buildings were 110 stories high. The 110th floor on the North Tower was the Windows of the World restaurant. And unfortunately, that was open that morning. The 110th floor, the 106th floor, and the South Tower, those floors were observation decks, and thank God it was too early in the morning for them to be open that day. All the other floors that I didn't mention, above 105 through 110, in both buildings, were heating, ventilation, air conditioning, elevator equipment, elevator cables, no human beings. We were getting ready to go up to 105, the highest occupied level of the South Tower at that time. And we swiped our way through the electronic turnstiles. You had a choice. To the right, a bank of elevators that serviced the floors from 1 through 77. To the left, a bank of elevators that serviced you on a big elevator basis and on an express basis to the 78th floor sky lobby level. And that's exactly what it was, a second lobby in the building. Took that on an express basis up to 78, then you would switch over to another set of elevators that serviced everything from 79 all the way through 110. That's what we did. We went up to 78, got off, switched over, got up to 105. The doors open up, and there's Mary Weeman, the woman that I had mentioned earlier from Aon Corporation. And it was kind of a surreal sight, because there's Mary, and in one hand, she's got a spray bottle of Murphy's Oil soap, and in the other hand, she's got a rag. Now, she was not Susie Homemaker by any stretch of the imagination, but that's how important this whole meeting was to her. She wanted everything perfect for that meeting, right down to the furniture inside the enclosed conference room at which we were going to have our meeting. The conference room that we were in, wow, this is a cavernous place, was probably about a tenth of the size of where we are today. Probably this section right here, okay? 4 walls, no windows, 1 door. 54 of us herded into that room for that meeting that day. And the meeting was supposed to commence at 8:30, and I've been in the insurance industry for 37 years, and there's never been a meeting that's ever started on time, and this day was no different, okay? 8:30 came and went. Everybody's drinking Starbucks, talking about kids and soccer over the weekend and sports and football and whatever, okay? And at 8:48, the lights flickered. That's it. Just a flicker of lights. We didn't hear anything. We couldn't see anything. We didn't feel anything. Just a flicker of lights. Almost immediately, a guy by the name of Rick Blood from the Aon Corporation came bounding into the room. He said, "Hey, there's been an explosion in the North Tower. We got to evacuate." 54 intelligent human beings all in the same room, all at the same time, and we all did the same exact thing. We're fine. We're fine. It's New York. Stuff happens. We'll be okay. Let us have our meeting. And Rick looked back at us, and he kind of had a forlorn look in his face. He said, no, man. You don't understand. I'm a volunteer fire marshal for the 105th, 104th, 103rd floors. I can't leave until all of you leave. And I want to leave. And I know Rick got everybody out of that room because I was the last guy out. And he proceeded to escort us all to the nearest fire stairwell in the building. And that's where he told us for the first time that we were going to walk down 105 flights of steps. Oh yeah, what a bunch of happy campers at that point, you know? And everybody did the same exact thing all at the same time. They all reached into their pockets, their left or their right hip, wherever, and they pulled out their cell phone. They were going to call somebody to moan and groan about the fact that we couldn't have our meeting. And something interesting happened on the way to the cell phone. This was back in the day and age when flip phones were all the rage. If any of you have a flip phone, shame on you, okay? But so everybody flipped them on, right? They went to activate them, see what they could get, and something interesting really happened. No service. No service. No service. See, the main cell tower for all of southern Manhattan was on top of the North Tower, the first building that was hit. Cell service was virtually interrupted. And remember that joke I made about landlines? You're all smart, young adults, and you understand what a regular landline is, a regular phone line. And if you're thinking, so, okay, the cell doesn't work, okay, you got to get on a regular phone. Good idea. But think about this. Everybody in New York City is now on those landlines, those regular phones, trying to call their mom, dad, sister, brother, aunt, uncle, whomever, to let them know that they're okay. And even more incredibly, everybody in the world, that's no stretch, folks, everybody in the world that knows somebody in New York City is now calling in on those landlines, trying to make sure mom, dad, sister, brother, aunt, uncle are okay. Landlines were overmatched, couldn't handle all the communication traffic. Cell service, gone. The major understands this, the sergeant understands this, you all understand this. If you ever have a chance to serve this country in a great way, I tell you, what's the first thing you do when you attack the enemy? You cut the lines of communication. And that's exactly what happened that morning. Communications were gone. So now you've got this group of type A, hyper-up insurance executives, and they can't use their cell phones, they can't communicate, and now they're doubly ticked off about what was going on. And I'm sure you're thinking to yourself, well, didn't you understand what was going on? And that's exactly the point. As young as you were, as little as you were, each and every one of you had a greater sense of what was going on outside and inside those buildings than any of us that were right there. We had no clue. Not a clue. We got back into the fire stairwell and started to make our way down. If you've ever been in a fire stairwell inside a high-rise building, they all are the same. They're concrete bunkers, 4 walls of concrete block, okay? Doors at each level. The doors are open or unlocked at all times, but if they're open during an emergency, they're on magnets, they automatically close, okay, to stop fires, to keep fire from going in, going out, whatever, okay? All the same. And when you get in there, you'll see signs in those fire stairwells. And there'll be signs on the backs of the doors at each level that basically say, don't get out of here except at the lobby level. Don't leave this except at the lobby level. And I know those exist. Some insurance geek like me is responsible for them. That's a fire insurance. That's a life safety type of thing. And it's just a good idea. So we knew that. And we got down to the 90th floor. And the fire stairwell to the 90th floor was propped open. And everybody's filing out of the fire stairwell onto the 90th floor. But I'm in the fire insurance business. How ironic is that? I'm in the fire insurance business, and I know better. Right. Okay, this is a great group to ask this question to. For all of you who are sitting and listening, when your mom or dad told you sometime within the past year, 2 years to 2 weeks to 2 months, you absolutely, positively will not do that, what'd you do? Yeah, admit it. You did it, okay? I did it. Well, you know what? I was 45 years old. I was just like you. I didn't know the building. I didn't understand what was going on. I thought maybe I had to get to another fire stairwell. I didn't know. I walked out onto the 90th floor. And I got to tell you, that's the worst 30, 40 seconds of my life. To look out those windows to the north. See that building, these huge, gaping black holes through the sides. Gray and black billows of smoke pouring out of those holes. Flames redder than any red I had ever seen before in my life, licking up the sides of the building and beyond the roof level. And it was a crystal clear September day that day. And I remember being able to see through that smoke and through that fire and looking into those black holes and seeing the fuselage of a large plane lodged inside the building. And I kept thinking to myself, my God, how did the pilot not see the building? The fact is, he did see the building. He did. And to see all that, and to see furniture, paper, people being pulled out of the building against their will was an unbelievable, gruesome, awesome sight. And I was so afraid. I knew this wasn't an Xbox game. This wasn't a made-for-TV movie. This was reality. And I just wanted to go home. Two feelings took over my being almost immediately, but the most honest of those feelings, the one that tugs at your heart, the one that each and every one of you have, whether it was yesterday, the day before, a year ago, a month ago, every one of you have had it. And yeah, guys, you have had this just as much as any woman in this audience, that pit of your stomach, I want my mommy feeling. I just wanted to go home. I didn't want to be there. I wanted to go home. And I turned to leave. And people were on that floor, and they seemed to be frozen. I don't know, frozen in fear, mesmerized by what they saw. They're screaming at the top of their lungs, and yet they can't seem to go anywhere. I turned around so quickly. There was a guy right behind me from our meeting, a guy by the name of Lud Picaro. He was an all-American middle linebacker when he went to University of Pittsburgh. Now he's in the insurance business, and he's huge. And I turned around, and with my little squatty body, I almost knocked him over, okay? I was in such a hurry to leave, and he put his big hands on my shoulders, and he looked at me, and he said, "What are you going to do, man?" And I said, "I'm getting the heck out of here. What are you going to do?" And he said, "You know what? I think that's a good idea. I'm going to leave. But before I go, I got to go to the restroom." That simple decision to use a restroom cost Lud his life that day. That simple decision. I got back to the top of the fire stairwell. They were making an announcement over the PA system. The announcement went something to the effect of, "The event has been contained to the North Tower. The South Tower is considered safe. We suggest that if you work in the South Tower, you return to your workstation. If you are a visitor, we suggest that you stay where you are. If you feel you need to leave, please proceed with caution." Now, I know maybe that doesn't make sense, right? But think about this. There's some woman or man in charge of building security, and they're down at the ground level of the building at this particular point in time. At this point, you know there's a cop on one side, there's a firefighter on the other side of that person, and they're looking back at the security person and saying, "Hey, you know what? Outside it's raining concrete, steel, bodies. Where are you going to put 25,000 people? Where are you going to put them? What are you going to do with them?" And I'm sure this person thought, wait a minute, our building's fine. The elevators are going up and down, the electricity's working, the air conditioning, ventilation system all working. Everybody stay put. Who would ever thought that within 18 minutes the same exact thing would happen to our building? We got down to the 78th floor, the sky lobby level that I had mentioned before. And there's Mary Weeman, and she's out in front of me, and she's screaming back at me, "Joey, Joey, Joey." The only other people in the world to call me Joey are my old Polish aunts, okay? "Joey, I am not walking down 78 flights of steps. I am taking the elevator because there's just no way I'm going all the way down these steps." She was using a word that you would never use here, okay? That was Mary, strong, leader, powerful. I see a guy who I knew from the Liberty International Insurance Company, a competing company. This guy's name was Al Kappelman. He was a volunteer firefighter. He was the captain of his company out on Long Island, following Mary to the elevator. I see my friend Dave Carlone, guy who was senior vice president for Factory Mutual Insurance Company, the best, the greatest fire insurance company in all the world, following Mary to the elevator. Finally, my common sense took over in my brain, and I thought to myself, you know, building, state of duress, fire, I know it's not our building, but I don't think I should get in an elevator. I don't think I should. And I looked at Mary, and I kind of gave her that polite little wave and turned and went back to the fire stairwell. Arguably the best decision I made in what is still my life. Because I was somewhere between the 74th and the 72nd floor when the second plane plowed through our building. That plane went through our building between floors 78 and 82 on an angle. We were just a few floors below the strike zone. Never felt anything like that in my life. That fire stairwell that we were inside, that concrete bunker, started to shake from side to side. I'm no engineer, I can't tell you angles, but this thing is shaking like it's not supposed to be shaking, back and forth. The concrete spidering out, the handrails breaking away from the wall, the steps underneath our feet undulating like waves in the ocean, and we feel this heat ball blowing by us, and we smell this jet fuel, the fire retardant material coming down on us like snow, and this thing's just going back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. It feels like forever. Maybe it was a minute, maybe seconds. It finally stops and settles. And you would think that there would be this massive pandemonium. And yet, in that stairwell, there was nothing but a stunned silence. I had the good fortune of working with the people from the USA Today and ABC News just a month prior to the first anniversary of the event. And I learned something at that time that I always mention at this point in the presentation. Just the friction of the plane through the building. No explosion, no fire, no anything else, just the friction of the steel through the steel generated over 2,000 degrees Fahrenheit. All those people on the 78th floor were killed instantly. They literally didn't know what hit them. And for them, it was a blessing, because for them, there was no pain. No pain. For those of us that were by, it became somewhat of a surreal event. Conjecture started to take over. We had seen a plane in the other building. We thought maybe a fuel cell exploded and shook our building so violently. We all tried to use our cell phones again. And thank God they didn't work at that particular point in time. At that point, what we didn't know couldn't hurt us. Ignorance was bliss. So we were just concentrating on going down and getting out. And we saw some things on the way out that were unbelievable. You see, almost immediately, in a case like this, in a big emergency, human nature at its finest. Now, all your teachers will tell you the same thing, because this is an old adage that the teachers have been using for years, but it's true. 95% of the problems are caused by 5% of the kids. You've heard that one before, okay? But that's true in life. Human beings, just like you and me, we're good. We're good. And we want to do good. And we want to be good. And we want to be helpful. And you see an emergency like this, and everybody starts to help each other, just automatically. It's unbelievable. You had people that were on crutches, canes, and wheelchairs, overweight, scared to death, not knowing what was going on. And regular folks, just like you and me, started helping them out, coaching and coaxing them down the steps. It was a beautiful thing. Made some other observations on the way down those steps at that point that were almost kind of comical. For instance, at one place and one time, I have never seen so many pairs of women's shoes. Now, you think about it, you're 70 flights of steps above ground, and you're in 3 or 4 inch heels. Like they say in New York, forget about it. A lot of barefooted women that day, okay? If you wanted a new laptop computer, That was your day. There was more electronic equipment ditched inside that fire stairwell than an old bankrupt Circuit City store or anything like that. I mean, there were backpacks, overcoats, briefcases, bags of food, you name it. Stuff just ditched to the side. But egress or exiting was fine because you were 2, 3, 4 people wide going down the steps, and everybody was going down the steps until the 35th floor. And that's the chance we had for the first time to encounter the police, the firefighters, and the paramedics from New York City and the Port Authority. Just the looks in their eyes, told the story. They knew. They knew. They knew that they were going up those steps to try to save lives that they couldn't save. They knew that they were marching up those steps to try to fight a fire that they couldn't beat. They knew that they were marching into the bowels of hell, and they knew that they were going up, and they knew that they were never coming back. They knew. They knew. I ask you, could you be that brave? Could you be that strong? Almost immediately at that time, right to my left, was a guy walking along with us, clearly a maintenance guy from the building. He had a brown shirt with a blue yoke and a name tag over his pocket, a name I never did get. And he was carrying along with him one of the most annoying inventions God ever allowed us to create, the Nextel phone with the walkie-talkie feature. And this thing had been incredibly quiet the entire time down the steps. And all of a sudden, when we saw the cops and the firefighters and the paramedics coming at us, this thing started to belch and beep and make all kinds of electronic noise, and we hear this voice scream out, "We're on 82, we can't get down, we don't know what we're gonna do." And this guy, he's at my left, he spins on the balls of his feet, and he turns around to go back. I looked at him and I said, "Man, what are you gonna do?" And he looked back at me and he said, "I don't know, but I gotta save my friend." I submit to you, that nameless maintenance man, that's a true American hero. That man who was willing to lay down his life to save that of a friend. He's someone that should always be remembered, never forgotten. I can only hope that the cops and the firefighters turned that man around that day and made him get out of the building. We were down at about 18 on our way down when we encountered the next person we encountered who was on 15. But we encountered him at 18 because he had a megaphone, an electronic bullhorn. And this guy, he's singing at the top of his lungs in a voice only a mother could love on payday. I mean, this guy would never make the first cut for Idol, okay? I mean, just horrible, okay? He'd be on the outtakes, all right? And he's singing, "God Bless America," and he doesn't even know all the words. And every once in a while, he'd stop in the middle, he'd say, "This is a day you're never going to forget. This is a day that's going to go down in history." He was a security guy from the building. Now, you're old enough now, you know the story of the Titanic, right? You know, the boat hits the iceberg. The captain tells the musicians, go up on the deck, play music. Get them off the boat. Keep them calm and get them off the boat. That's what this guy was doing that day. I'm sure his boss sent him up to 15 and said, "Listen, keep these people moving, get them loose, make them laugh a little bit," and you got to know with this bad singing, he was making everybody laugh, "and get them out of the building." And I wonder how many lives that man saved that day while giving up his own. I wonder. We got down to the lobby level, and we couldn't get out on the street. You're looking out these glass windows, and you see the crumbled steel, the crumbled concrete, and the twisted steel, and the red blotches on the ground, and you knew what the red blotches on the ground were. And so we couldn't get out there, and They're taking us down into the concourse level of the building, the underground level of the building. And that's the chance we had for the first time to see people with real needs, people with missing limbs, gaping wounds, real blood and gut stuff. And that human nature that I talked about, that still takes over. You want to reach out, you want to try to help, and you couldn't that day. There were so many cops, firefighters, paramedics there to help. I have never seen in one place at one time such an outpouring of caring, of concern, of love. And that's what that was this day, this total outpouring of love. And so the people that needed help were getting the help that they needed. And those of us that were okay, we're on our own. And the herd mentality takes over, and you hope that somebody at the front of your herd knows where they're going. You're in this concourse, which is a rat maze of corridors, every store known to mankind, big train station for path, signs that mean nothing to you if you're from New York, 1, 2, 3, 4, red, blue, yellow, green, uptown, downtown, Bronx, you don't know. And I hear this guy out in the front of our herd, and he says, we want to get to the northeastern end of this complex. It's the furthest away from the two buildings. Boom. My internal little GPS said, yep, he's right. Got to follow him. And we're waving our way through these corridors, every which way to Sunday, and we're about ready to make that final left up to the northeastern end of the complex. And there it is, ladies and gentlemen. Starbucks. And it is open. And there are people in line. I kid you not. Now, I am a card-carrying member of the Starbucks Nation, okay? But I don't know how much double, triple, cappuccino, or whatever it is people need. I guess in a moment of crisis, even the greatest minds aren't where they need to be. We got up to the northeastern end of that complex, and we're walking up escalators that are no longer escalating. David Duffy, my business compatriot, a guy that I do business with every day. He yells out, Joe, Joe, Joe. I look behind him, I said, my God, Duffy, what are you doing here? He said, I stopped and I thought, wait a minute, yeah, that's right, you work here. I'm sorry. Hey man, why are you behind me? And he said, you don't want to know. And I said, yeah, I want to know. You work on 54. I was on 105. You're behind me. Why are you behind me? Oh, man. He said, I didn't know whether we were going to get in the building tomorrow. And I went back up. I was about halfway down. I went back up about 25 flights of steps because, see, I'm in charge of the Yankees tickets for the office. The smartest human being I know went 25 floors back up during a terrorist attack in a building to get the Yankees tickets. If they were Blue Eagles tickets, I could have understood. But Yankees tickets, my God. Unbelievable, huh? Again, the greatest of minds never where they should be sometimes. But fate was at play. There was a reason for this. We got out across the street. We're in front of Trinity Church. We look back at this unbelievable sight, this ticker tape of concrete, steel, and bodies. I was supposed to go back to Philadelphia on a train that day. I was supposed to take a rental car from the train station in Philly to the airport in Philly and fly back to Chicago, where I lived at that time. That wasn't going to happen. And Duffy knew that, and he said, why don't you come with me, man? He said, my wife works in the North Tower on the 40th floor. Haven't heard from her. I just want to get home, make sure she's okay. You come with me. I said, where do you live? He said, Upper West Side, 111th Street. I said, oh my God, that's a long way. And he looked at me and he said, you got something better to do? And I said, no, you're right, I'll come. And we started to walk, and we were 8 blocks north of the building, 8 minutes, when we came across a commercial laundry, doors thrown wide open. WINS, the all-news radio station, blaring out from this commercial laundry's radio that this was an on-purpose terrorist attack, and our jaws just dropped to the ground. Not here. This can't happen here. Not here. But it was the next couple of sounds that are the sounds that haunt each and every one of us that were there that day, even to this day. First, the twisting steel and crumbling concrete of what once was the South Tower, the building that we had been in just 8 minutes prior, coming to the ground. Even more hauntingly, the sound of millions of people all in the streets of New York, all screaming the same blood-curdling scream, all at the same time. We were lucky. David, the guy that I had met on the way out, he had a friend that lived in the Tribeca section of the city where we were at that time, and we got into his friend Meredith's flat. Ironically, her husband was in Chicago and wanted to get back to New York. I wanted to get to Chicago. I mean, life has its way of doing funny things, right? And we did what all of the people through the country did, and you were probably doing it, you just don't remember it. You were sitting in front of the TV, watching and trying to understand. And we were about 5-6 hours into the event when one of the true heroes of that day, the mayor of New York City, Rudy Giuliani, he got on the TV. And he started to talk, and he said, people, New York, he's talking to New Yorkers at this point, but it felt like he was talking to the world. This has been a tough day, but we're going to get through this. We're going to survive. We're going to recover. We're going to be okay. And I know all of you just want to get home. You're too young to remember this, but there were pictures of people. They had shut all the transportation down. No buses, no trains, no anything. All the planes were grounded. Nothing, okay? People were walking over the George Washington Bridge from New York City into New Jersey to get home. People were walking out the train tracks and the highways. The cars were shut down. You couldn't drive to get back onto Long Island. Everybody walking miles and miles and miles. And Giuliani knew this, and he understood this, and he said, New York, you got 8 million people here, and I know all of you just want to get home. And we believe we've mustered enough confidence in our uniforms, and we are going to reopen the subways. Reopen the subways. Unbelievable decision. Duffy looked at me and he said, come on, we're going. I said, where? He said, we're going on the subway. We're going back to my place. I said, man, I don't know. Midtown Manhattan, Empire State Building? I don't know, man. He said, come on, we're going. We got on the second train that pulled into the nearest subway station. We got to the second stop, which was Penn Station, Amtrak, the way that I had come in that morning and the way that I wanted to get out no matter how far I could get. And he looked at me, I looked at him. We didn't say anything. We walked into the train station. We looked like a couple of tourists. And we're looking around, and there's this woman from Amtrak, and in her finest New York accent, she looks and she says, where you going, honey? And I said, I just want to get to Philadelphia. And she says, right down here, there's a train about to take off. And I grabbed into my pocket to give her my return ticket. I had a round-trip ticket. And she looked at me and she says, are you kidding, sweetie? We're not collecting tickets today. Some things don't change in New York, and that was one of those days, okay? And I got down on that train. You go underneath the Hudson River through a tunnel, and you come up on the Jersey side, and you look back at what once was the greatest skyline in all the world, now relegated to a gray and black cloud. How sad. It's 80 minutes from New York City to Philadelphia. That train was packed with people sitting and standing. Not a word was spoken. There were no words to say. And when I got to Philadelphia, I got into the rental car that I had, and I decided to go up to Northeast Philly, to the house that I grew up in as a kid, where my mom and dad lived. And when I got to the house, my mom was waiting for me. I got to tell all of you, especially you guys, love your mothers. Love your mothers. Because there's my mom, and she comes down the steps, and she gives me this big, giant bear hug, pats my head, sobs in my ear, my baby. Didn't have the heart to remind her that I was the oldest one. But my mom did for me at that moment what she continues to do for me to this day. She helped me, and she loved me. And that's what I needed at that moment, was my mother's love. She helped me into the house, and I got in front of the TV, and I passed out. I don't know, physical exhaustion, mental fatigue. And about 2 o'clock in the morning, I feel this kick in my side, and I rub my eyes back, and I push my glasses up, and I look up, and my father's hovering over me, and he's saying, aren't you ever going to go to bed? And I said, oh, my God, I'm 17 again. But I did what he told me. I got up, went up the steps, slept for a couple of hours, got up the next morning, called the office. and let them know that I wasn't going to be in. And it was a good thing, because they thought I was dead. And I started to make that trip back to Aurora, Illinois, the Chicago suburb where I lived at that point. It's a 14-hour car ride. I did it in 11 and a half hours. I don't suggest that you do that, okay? But I just wanted to get home. And like I said, this was before rollover minutes and national plans, but it didn't matter. I was calling anybody that wanted to listen to me. It was good to be heard, good to be talking to somebody. And I was about 10, 15 minutes away from home. I called my wife for what was like the 100th time, and I said, I'm almost there, 10, 15 minutes away. And she went, okay. And I said, you got something else going on? What's going on? She said, there's going to be a mass at Our Lady of Mercy Church. I said, stop. Yeah, it's a good day to go to church. It's a good day. I'll be there. I'll be there. And I got down to that church, tried to pull into the lot. You would have thought it was Christmas. There was no room at the inn. And I don't know whether I was more afraid the day before or the minute I opened up the back doors to that church to see these hundreds of pairs of eyes all staring back at me. They had known where I had been. I looked over to the right, to the pew where we always sit. We're Roman Catholics. We always sit in the same pew, okay? And there is my wife, a couple of my kids, and my friends. My wife's a very non-demonstrative person. She would never be doing what I'm doing here. She would never be on exhibit like this. So it was doubly incredible to see what happened next, to see her jump over the back of the pew, run to the back of the church, and give me the greatest hug and a kiss a man could ever want. You know what? I knew at that moment that I was home. I was home. And so that's how this story goes. And when it comes to lessons learned and when it comes to decision making and lessons learned, it's almost impossible to recap all the lessons. But some of them are very, very clear. Every decision is important, no matter how big or no matter how small one may seem. A decision can change your life and the lives of others in ways way beyond that which you can ever imagine. The information, the resource, and the trust of your source that you bring to a decision-making process determines the strength and the accuracy of that decision, for better or for worse. And yes, the key lesson, making the right decision is not easy. It is not easy. But if you trust your heart, if you trust yourself, your gut, your resources, your heart, your mind, your soul, you can make critical decisions that can have tremendously successful results. I'm here today alive and fortunate to be able to share all this with you because of a series of decisions made in the most critical of situations. But you know what? You don't need to be in a flaming high-rise office building on the 105th floor during a terrorist attack to be that effective and successful. You can be in a beautiful high school auditorium in South Carolina on an absolutely gorgeous September day. And by making the right decisions, you could have positive and lasting effects on your peers and your partners, helping them and you to improve and maybe even save the lives of others. I don't do this to feel better. God knows it only breaks my heart again and again. I don't do it for fame or notoriety, nor do I do it for monetary reasons. I don't accept payment for my presentations. I do this because I believe as a person who's been part of a historic event, it is my obligation, it is my duty to give a voice to the 3,000 who lost their own voices that day so that they once more can be heard, and to allow their spirits so senselessly dashed that day to once more rise and let those spirits soar, reminding us that while their lives may have been lost, their lives were not lost in vain. This is going to scare you to hear as much as it scares me to say. My generation, the generations before me, we haven't done such a great job with the world, have we? We haven't. You know what? We're counting on you. we're counting on you. And in case nobody ever told you this today or yesterday or within the last couple of hours, unless you don't believe it, I'm here to tell you it's the truth. We love you. God, we love you. And we need you. We need you. We need you to do a better job than we've done. We need you to love better. We need you to live better. We need you to lead this country better. And you can do it. I know that you can do it. I look in your eyes and I see the brightness, the hope, the faith that we all have. God. And I tell you this story today so that you can carry it forward and tell others. And while I don't seek compensation for my speech, I do ask for payment in one way and one way only. To always remember and to never, never forget. God bless the Blue Eagles. God bless South Carolina. God bless America. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Oh, that's nice. Thank you. All right. Now, you know how the teachers always tell you there is no such thing as a dumb question? Well, there are, okay? But that's okay anyhow, all right? We got time for a couple of questions, so I'm going to look out to who has the first question and answer it. And don't be shy. This group is not shy. I guarantee you I can tell. If I can't see your hand up, somebody yell out their question. Go.
9/11 was going. I was 3 years old, and my dad put the news on, and I watched it with my dad, and I saw what happened.
And you can remember. 3 years old and you can remember.
And I'm 17 now.
That can be a traumatic event. And I got to tell you, I can tell you, if you can remember it that vividly, and that's an incredible thing, the only thing that I would ask you to do is manage what you remember and manage what you see, manage it in a positive way like I do, because, man, this is the type of stuff that could eat you up, okay?
Because I saw the first tower coming down,
Right, that was our tower,
and I just looked, and I heard everybody just
screaming. So you were there?
help them, please help them. I saw the whole video after video after video. It just made me so sad.
Don't be sad. Use it.
How has the events of 9/11 changed your life?
Yeah, that's a great question. How's it changed my life, Whatever I believed in more now, okay? If you needed three things to get out that day. You needed good luck, you needed good decisions, and you needed to have some faith. My faith grew stronger as a result of this. I knew that I was a good decision maker, and I was able to become a stronger decision maker. But it also changed the way I see things in life from a priorities perspective. What used to be so important to me isn't so important anymore, okay? What is important, the love of those that I love the most, the caring of those I love the most, those are the things that are most important, and you tend to reprioritize to the most important things. Is there one back there?
How do you feel about the rampant Islamophobia that followed 9/11? The rampant hatred of Muslim people. How do you feel about how 9/11 caused a rapid increase of that?
Major, help me out. I'm having a hard time hearing the question.
How do you feel about the rampant hatred of Muslim people that followed 9/11?
Okay, great question. Great question. I'm sure that poor person is saying, he's deaf too, he's old and he's deaf. You know what? This isn't anything about Muslims, blacks, whites, yellows, greens, purples, orange, Democrat, Republican. Human beings were attacking human beings. We know who did this. We know who did this. And to have hate, it doesn't get you anywhere. It doesn't get you anywhere. The fact that people, thank you. The fact that people do what they do or say what they say or act the way they act, it's just ignorance. That's truly all it is. That's why we need you and all of you to make this better, okay? That's the answer to it. Yeah.
How did the lights flicker when you were at the house?
The lights flickered in the office that we were in because I guess there was an interruption of electricity. There was just something there that caused the interruption, but that's the only thing we saw. We didn't have any other kind of notification that something was wrong. Somebody down here has been waving their hand. Go. Last one. Boy, that's a really good question. If I had to relive that moment, would I have survived the second time around? Kind of like a memento moment, kind of like a Back to the Future moment, huh? Yeah, I think I would have. And the reason I think I would have is because, like I said to you, I was making good decisions. I knew that something was wrong, and I think I would continue to make those same decisions. Being so afraid was not such a bad thing at that moment, because being so afraid gave me that natural inclination, get out. And that's what I wanted to do that day. And I believe that I had 3,000 guardian angels looking down at me and telling me I needed to get out. So yeah, if I had the chance to do it all over again, I think I'd do the same exact thing. You guys have been terrific. You've been absolutely terrific. Thank you for being here. I wish we had more time to talk, and have a good rest of your day, all right?
Okay. Are we on here? As a reminder, we have homeroom today, so when you depart, carefully proceed to homeroom. Thank you.